destroying a nation from within. That's the goal of the Chinese regime. One of the biggest weapons is something we rely on every day, our smartphones. In this special report, we look at how China's cyber attacks are going far beyond institutions. Now they're getting personal and changing our behavior through the very devices in the palms of our hands.
Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. One of the Chinese regime's biggest weapons against Americans is something a little too close for comfort, our phones. More specifically, the apps that run on them.
They're basically legal malware that enable the developer to monitor, track, and data mine the end user for financial gain 24/7, 365 days a year.
That's Rex M. Lee, cybersecurity advisor at MySmartPrivacy. He calls these apps legal malware. As to what these apps can do,
a single intrusive app enables the developer to collect over 5,000 highly confidential data points associated with the end user's personal information, business information, medical information, legal information, and employment information, because the surveillance and data mining done by these companies is indiscriminate, meaning that they're not only collecting consumer information, they're collecting every bit of information from the end user, including text messages, email attachments, calendar events, and so forth.
But once it's in the hands of those companies, it doesn't just end there.
As we're seeing in the news is that these tech companies are aligned with governments, so the information a lot of times is ending up in the hands of the government.
One company in the hot seat is TikTok. The video sharing platform has gotten a lot of buzz lately. But why is that? After all, entertaining videos don't seem like the stuff of national security risks.
TikTok is an extension of the Chinese Communist Party. It is one of their primary social media platforms and tools. Let's just get real. And so even on platforms like Pinterest, but there's a lot of TikTok on there, and I purposely block those and report them, because even looking at those, again, leaves a digital fingerprint. Don't give China your digital fingerprints.
That's John Mills, retired Army colonel and former director of cybersecurity at the Defense Department. He goes on to explain what exactly the Chinese regime can do with those digital fingerprints.
They will know your interests, your behavior, your geolocation, and they will start regurgitating back to you to shape your behavior. They are trying to psychologically program you. They're using PSYOP on you. They're trying to reinforce and shape and influence your behavior.
That means by controlling what kind of information you see, an adversary like the Chinese regime can eventually shape a person's behavior. Recently, the House Chief Administration Officer is warning lawmakers not to use TikTok, citing security and privacy concerns, given the app's ownership by Chinese company ByteDance. Many lawmakers had turned to the app as a way to reach out to younger constituents.
And TikTok especially, it's a horrifically bad idea. Even be watching TikTok, because that even leaves your digital fingerprints and your digital persona. Don't give your fingerprints to China.
But a cyber advisory issued August 9th warns that TikTok may collect biometric identifiers and biometric information as defined under U.S. laws, including face prints and voice prints from videos uploaded to the user's platform. Mills warns giving that kind of information away is akin to...
You're giving away the keys to your kingdom when you start participating. They will understand your finances, your financial behavior, what you're looking at, what your interests are, what you write, what you type.
The cyber advisory went on to warn about TikTok's policy, which includes features like automatic user data collections. That covers information like the device's phone number, Wi-Fi network names, SIM card serial numbers, GPS status information, and subscription information, among others. But it doesn't stop there. Other concerns include checking device location every hour, plus continual requests to access the user's contacts and external storage. We reached out to TikTok about these points. They wrote back, the allegations in the House CAO's advisory about TikTok range from misleading to wrong. We have requested a meeting to discuss the multiple inaccuracies. The August advisory notes the data TikTok collects can be potentially mined for commercial and private purposes and is stored on servers located in China. To address that, TikTok has pledged to move U.S. data to third-party Oracle servers located outside of China. It's a transition that's still ongoing.
China is creating digital twins of all of us, and it gets extremely concerning when they commingle that with, they've breached all the networks of those firms.
This comes as a group of lawmakers are requesting TikTok appear before the Senate. That's over fears the app has access to U.S. data. The appeal follows on the heels of a BuzzFeed report from June, based on leaked audio recordings from 80 internal TikTok meetings. According to the report, 14 statements from 9 different employees at TikTok indicated that engineers in China had access to U.S. data between September 2021 and January 2022 at the very least. Let's take a step back. Why is cyberspace so important?
The cyber environment and terrain is a wild west of intelligence operations for China. So I think everyone needs to be vigilant in their, we call that inside of government. I'm not inside of government anymore. We call that our cyber personas. Cyber personas.
Given the importance of this cyber realm, how does China get in? As it turns out, with a little help from the inside.
About 90% of them are associated with insider attacks. This means that it usually comes from an employee, even a company leader in the company that could be leveraged, as well as the attacks could come from the supply chain that supports the company or the organization or government agency.
Mills adds, it's not like what's depicted in Hollywood.
Everybody has these visions of Chinese supercomputers crunching through all cryptography. Now, some of that's going on, and NSA is attempting to deal with that.
He adds, but over 95% of the cyber attacks the Defense Department or intelligence community deals with goes back to that insider threat. So just how sophisticated are these attacks?
Well, they're very sophisticated today. No longer are hacks coming in through traditional methods like telecommunication networks or even through email phishing. They still can attack through email phishing. They've advanced that to SMS texting, by the way. A text message can launch an attack as well.
That means the very devices we hold in our hands can be weaponized against us. Lee adds.
But mainly what we're seeing, nation-state hackers from China, which are apt groups, or Russia, like Fancy Bear, Sandworm, and some of their groups, or Lazarus from North Korea. We're seeing these groups utilize the Android OS, Apple iOS, and Microsoft Windows 8, 10, and 11 OS to launch in a wide array of attacks on networks that include ransomware attacks, DDoS attacks, and man-in-the-middle attacks. They can launch just about any attack either through the operating system that supports a mobile device like a smartphone or a PC.
And with that, phones can be just as vulnerable as computers.
They can utilize apps. Google has removed over 300 of these types of apps and recently that could launch these types of attacks. Apple was compromised through their MDM their MDM security platform as well.
But Mills adds it's not just our digital lives at risk. It's our genetic identity as well.
But anybody who collects your DNA so you can trace your family heritage, I would suggest not doing that. That's a very bad idea right now because China's collecting all that and adding that to your file that they have on you. I guarantee you that most Americans now, the Chinese intelligence, the MSS, has a complete file on almost all Americans, if not all Americans.
But cyber is just one arm of a much bigger threat.
These attacks that you're hearing about in the news are all tied to unrestricted hybrid warfare waged by China. And this goes back to the 1990s. And what unrestricted hybrid warfare is, it's warfare that targets everyone where there are no rules. This includes targeting children, teens, business leaders, members of the military, members of law enforcement, elected officials, even the president.
Greg Copley, president of the International Strategic Studies Association, explains that for the Chinese regime,
they literally see every form of human activity as being weaponizable against their adversaries. So that includes all social contacts, it includes commercial contacts and contracts and the like. It includes the manipulation of international organizations such as the United Nations, and particularly the sub-bodies of the United Nations, whether it's the World Health Organization, which was manipulated heavily by Beijing during the COVID crisis. So everything becomes a weapon of war.
Given that, what can be done to defend against it? Mills notes there are three main steps when it comes to cybersecurity or cyber hygiene. First is two-factor authentication.
So not just username and password, but you have a token, you have a digital, there's several different arrangements. They text they send a code to your phone. That's two-factor authentication.
Next up is staying clear of phishing scams. That means not clicking or responding to links that don't look right. Clicking on those links can let an adversary into your system. And thirdly, insider threats.
And the reality is, when you're planning to break into some place, whether it be physical a building or in the cyber world, the first thing you're always looking for is that insider that you can pay off, that you can flip and leave the right door unlocked.
But there are other steps that can help too.
What companies need to do and people need to do is they have to look at their devices. Apple devices are the best in regards to privacy and security. So I use Apple iPhone because they've really come a long ways. Now, they're still going to surveil and data mine you and collect as much information on you, but you can stop most of the data mining by the third-party apps that are either pre-installed on the device as well as the apps that you download through the App Store.
But there are other steps that can help too. That's through something called App Tracker, which will stop apps like Facebook from collecting your information unless you enable it. That's a big step from before. Lee describes how the platform used to collect that information automatically. And beyond individual users, how can companies protect themselves?
What companies really need to do is implement a top-down enterprise cybersecurity, privacy, and intelligence strategy. This means that companies need to really be more offensive with their cybersecurity, and they need to really employ counterintelligence as well as they also need to do wargaming. This is what Chinese companies are doing. Chinese companies employ counterintelligence and they're wargaming. So it's very important for companies to be able to implement an offensive cybersecurity strategy.
Here's what that looks like.
From the top down, when I say top down, I'm talking about the board of directors all the way to the frontline employees. We're seeing every level of a company compromised at some point through insider attack.
As for what happens when that top-down approach isn't in place, Lee gives an example as a warning.
At MD Anderson a couple of years ago, 3 scientists walked out the back door with $1 billion in intellectual property and research, and it ended up in the hands of the Chinese government. So that was not you can blame that on China, but really that's the fault of MD Anderson for not having a top-down cybersecurity, a top-down enterprise cybersecurity, privacy, and intelligence strategy to protect these type of things. They have to, and the best way to do this is through wargaming and understanding where all these breaches occur and where all these hacks can come from.
Mills points to other steps that can help block intruders.
Always password your passwords, okay? Because, if you've been around for a while, you start to collect and aggregate a whole lot of passwords. Well, However, now they always say, don't write your passwords down. Okay, I don't have a perfect memory, but be sophisticated in the way you store those passwords. Don't put them on an unsecure Word document or even PDF.
And sometimes going back to the basics can keep adversaries at bay.
Rebooting oftentimes kicks players out, nefarious players out of your home network. Reboot.
But Lee warns sometimes despite our best efforts, it's in the hands of those elected to serve us.
First of all, countries like India have banned all of the intrusive apps from China. You can't get TikTok in India. Other countries have followed suit. The problem here in the United States is the U.S.-China tech lobby. I say really the U.S.-China tech lobby is a national security threat for these reasons. The U.S. is one of the few countries that allow companies from adversarial nations to lobby their lawmakers through powerful K Street law firms.
He adds that it's not a partisan issue and impacts both sides of the aisle.
ByteDance hired former Trump advisor and ACG lobbyist David Urban, and they also hired ACG to lobby on their behalf. If you remember, a couple of years ago during the Trump administration, they were labeled a cybersecurity threat and a national security threat as well. And recently, Huawei hired Democrat strategist or former Democrat strategist Tony Podesta. So they're hiring both Republicans and Democrat advisors and former politicians or elected officials to do their lobbying for them, and they're paying them millions of dollars.
Lee says the messaging and the actions don't match.
When you look at what's going on one hand, the politicians are saying that China's a threat. On the other hand, they're taking money from Chinese companies through lobbyists, K Street law firms and lobbyists. So government's not going to protect you.
And sometimes the biggest threat comes from where you least expect it. Mills just released a new book titled The Nation Will Follow. He makes the argument that to save a nation, one has to first secure one's county, then the country will follow. But as experts warn, if we don't secure our own defenses, insiders will continue selling out to adversaries like the Chinese regime. Apps will continue giving away our most sensitive information, and the Chinese regime will accomplish its goal, destroying a nation from within. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.